The California sun was setting over Malibu when Marcus Kane's custom Harley roared up Pacific Coast Highway. At 42, Marcus was a walking contradiction. By day, he wore $1,000 suits to boardroom meetings as CEO of Kane Industries, a tech empire worth $500 million. By night and on weekends, he wore leather and rode with a brotherhood most people only knew from movies. His mansion sat on 3 acres of prime real estate, all glass and steel overlooking the ocean. Inside, his most precious treasure wasn't his art collection or vintage motorcycle garage. It was his 5-year-old daughter, Emma. Emma's mother, Catherine, had died in a car accident 2 years ago. Since then, Marcus had interviewed 47 nannies. 47 women who smiled too much, who saw dollar signs instead of his daughter, who treated the job like a stepping stone to something else. Then Sarah Mitchell walked through his door 3 months ago. Sarah was 28, with tired eyes that had seen too much and calloused hands that told stories she never spoke about. She arrived for the interview on a bus, carrying everything she owned in a backpack. No fancy resume, no references from wealthy families. Just honesty. "I need this job," she had said simply. "Not because of your money, because I know what it's like to lose everything. And I know your daughter needs someone who understands that kind of pain." Marcus hired her on the spot. Sarah lived in the guest house by the pool. Every morning at 6, she would wake Emma with pancakes shaped like animals. She never asked Marcus about his other life, about the leather vest hanging in his closet with patches that made security guards nervous. She simply accepted that some people contain multitudes. Emma bloomed under Sarah's care. The quiet, withdrawn little girl who barely spoke after her mother's death now laughed again. She painted pictures, told elaborate stories about fairies, and asked 1,000 questions about everything. Marcus found himself coming home earlier just to see them together. Sarah reading bedtime stories with different voices for each character. Sarah teaching Emma to braid wildflowers into crowns. Sarah sitting patiently while Emma processed her grief in 5-year-old words that broke and healed hearts simultaneously. What Marcus didn't know was that Sarah Mitchell wasn't entirely who she claimed to be. Her real name was Sarah Chin. 3 years ago, she had been a registered nurse in Seattle, engaged to a man named David Torres. David had been everything good in the world until he borrowed money from the wrong people. When he couldn't pay, they killed him. Then they came for Sarah. She ran, changed her name, disappeared into a life of cash-only jobs and never staying anywhere longer than necessary. She had been in Malibu for 3 months. 3 months of looking over her shoulder. 3 months of knowing she should leave before they found her. But Emma changed everything. This Tuesday started like any other. Marcus kissed Emma goodbye, told Sarah he wouldn't be home until late, and headed to a business meeting in San Francisco. The meeting was supposed to last until 8 p.m. It ended at 2. Marcus decided to surprise Emma. He called Sarah to let her know but got voicemail. He figured they were at the park or the beach. He smiled, imagining his daughter's face when he walked through the door early. He had no idea that at that exact moment, 3 men in a black SUV were parked outside his mansion gates. They had finally found Sarah Chin. The men had been tracking her for 3 years. They worked for Vincent Russo, a loan shark who considered David's debt unpaid. In Vincent's world, debts transferred. If the borrower died, someone else paid. And Sarah, as David's fiancée, was someone else. They had found her through a stupid mistake. Sarah had called her sister last month. Just once. Just to say she was alive. They traced the call. Now they sat outside the mansion watching through binoculars. They saw Sarah playing with Emma in the backyard. They saw the pool, the guest house, the obvious wealth. Vincent's lieutenant, a man named Frank Cordero, smiled coldly. This was better than they hoped. The girl clearly worked for someone rich. Rich people paid ransoms. Rich people wanted their children safe. The plan formed quickly. Take the nanny. Take the kid. Demand payment from whoever owned this palace. Kill Sarah slowly, painfully, as a message. Return the kid unharmed after payment. Frank made a call. Within an hour, 2 more vehicles arrived. 8 men total. All armed. All experienced in making people disappear. They waited until Marcus's security patrol passed. The guard drove by every 90 minutes. They had a window. At 3:15, they cut the power to the gate system and slipped onto the property. Sarah was helping Emma build a fairy house from pebbles and twigs when she heard the back gate click open. Something primal in her spine went cold. The security guard had passed 20 minutes ago. No one else should be entering. She looked up and saw them. 8 men spreading across the lawn in practiced formation. Professional, deliberate, and in the center, walking with the confidence of someone who had done this 100 times, was Frank Cordero. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She knew that face. She had seen it once, 3 years ago, standing over David's body. "Emma, go inside right now," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. "But I want to finish the fairy house," Emma protested. "Now, Emma, run to your room and lock the door. Do not come out until Daddy or I come get you. Do you understand?" Something in Sarah's tone made Emma move. The little girl dropped her pebbles and ran toward the house. One of Frank's men started to follow. "Touch that child and you die screaming," Sarah said, standing up slowly, placing herself between the men and the door Emma had just disappeared through. Frank laughed, a sound like gravel in a disposal. "Sarachin, you've been hard to find. Real hard. But here you are, playing house with some rich man's kid. What do you want, Frank?" "What do I want?" Frank pulled a gun from his jacket. "I want what David owed. With 3 years of interest. That comes to about $400,000. You got that kind of money, Sarah?" "You know I don't. But your boss does." Frank gestured at the mansion. "This place is worth what, 10 million? 15? He can afford to buy back his nanny and his daughter." Sarah's mind raced. Marcus was in San Francisco. The security guard wouldn't return for over an hour. Emma was inside, hopefully hiding. The panic button was in the main house, 30 feet away, and Frank's men were already moving to block every exit. "Leave Emma out of this. She has nothing to do with David. Nothing to do with any of this." Frank shrugged. "She's leverage now. That's all that matters. Boys, get the kid." 3 men moved toward the house. Sarah did the only thing she could think of. She ran at Frank, screaming, throwing herself at him with everything she had. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to buy Emma seconds. Frank backhanded her across the face. Sarah went down hard, tasting blood. 2 men grabbed her arms, hauling her up. Through blurred vision, she saw the others kicking in the French doors, heard Emma screaming from somewhere inside the mansion. "No," Sarah sobbed. "Please, please don't hurt her." Frank knelt beside her, pressing the gun against her temple. "You should have paid what you owed, Sarah. Now everyone pays." That's when they heard it. Distant at first, then growing louder. The unmistakable rumble of motorcycles. Not 1 or 2, dozens. Frank's head snapped toward the sound. The rumble grew louder, deeper, like thunder rolling across the earth. It wasn't just motorcycles. It was an army of them. "What the hell?" one of Frank's men muttered, moving toward the front of the property. Through the ornate iron gates they appeared. Harleys, dozens of them. Riders in leather vests, patches visible even from a distance. The Death Head logo. The rocker that read California. Hell's Angels. They didn't stop at the gate. The first bike, a massive Road King, crashed through the damaged security gate like it was made of paper. Then another, and another. They poured onto the property in a choreographed flood of chrome and fury. Frank grabbed Sarah by her hair, yanking her up as a shield. His men raised their weapons, but their hands were shaking now. "You didn't bring 8 men to a fight with Hell's Angels. You brought an army, and they had 8. The motorcycles formed a semicircle around Frank and his crew. Engines cut simultaneously, leaving only the tick of cooling metal and Emma's distant crying from inside the house. Riders dismounted, and Sarah saw what Frank saw. They were outnumbered 25 to 1. The riders parted, and Marcus Kane walked through. He still wore his business suit, but now he wore something else over it. A leather vest. Patches that told a story Frank was only beginning to understand. President. California Charter. Hell's Angels MC. Marcus wasn't just a millionaire who rode motorcycles on weekends. He was a full patch member. Had been since he was 23. The tech fortune came later, but the brotherhood came first. Let her go, Marcus said quietly. His voice was calm, but something in it made Frank's trigger finger freeze. You don't know what you're walking into, rich boy, Frank tried. This woman owes my boss 400 grand. She's been running for 3 years. Marcus took another step forward. I know exactly what I'm walking into. You came onto my property. You threatened my daughter. You put your hands on someone under my protection. That makes this my business now. Your business? Frank laughed, but it sounded hollow. You think your money scares me? Marcus smiled, and it was the coldest thing Sarah had ever seen. My money? No. But them? He gestured to the 200 bikers now surrounding them. They rode here for me, Frank. Every single one. Because that's what brothers do. If you're watching this and you believe in people who stand up for what's right, take a second and subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next you won't want to miss. Frank's gun wavered. His men were looking at him, waiting for orders that wouldn't come. You can't just kill us. We're made men. Russo will come for all of you. Marcus pulled out his phone, dialed, and put it on speaker. It rang twice. A rough voice answered. Yeah. Vincent, Marcus said. This is Marcus Kane. Your boys are on my property. They threaten my family. I'm giving you one chance to call them off before this becomes a war you cannot win. There was a long pause. Then Vincent Russo's voice came back, tight with something that might have been fear. Frank, stand down. Now. Frank's face went pale. Boss, we got the situation under control here. We just need... I said stand down. Vincent's voice cracked through the speaker like a whip. You have any idea who you're dealing with? That's Marcus Kane. That's the Reaper. The Reaper. Sarah had heard that name whispered in certain circles. A legend from 20 years ago. A Hell's Angel who had ended a war between rival clubs in one bloody night. Everyone thought he had died or disappeared. But he hadn't. He had just put on a suit and built an empire. Frank's hand loosened on Sarah's hair. She pulled away, stumbling toward Marcus. He caught her without taking his eyes off Frank. Vincent continued, his voice thick with damage control. Kane, this is a misunderstanding. The woman owes money. We were just collecting a debt. By terrorizing a 5-year-old child? Marcus's voice dropped lower. By breaking into my home? By putting your hands on my employee? We didn't know she worked for you. We didn't know about the kid. Vincent was scrambling now. The debt? It's from her dead boyfriend. 3 years old. We've been looking for her. Marcus looked at Sarah. She was shaking, blood on her lip, tears streaming down her face. How much? 400,000, Vincent said. With interest. Marcus laughed, short and bitter. You sent 8 men to collect 400,000. You terrorized a child. You threatened someone I care about. For pocket change. He pulled out his phone again, opened his banking app, and made a transfer. 30 seconds later, his phone pinged. Done. 400,000, plus another 100 for your trouble. The debt is paid. Sarah Chun is clear. Frank stared in disbelief. You're just paying it? Just like that? Just like that, Marcus confirmed. And now you're going to leave my property. All of you. Right now. Because Vincent understands what happens if you don't. There was silence on the phone. Then Vincent spoke, his voice defeated. Frank, take your men and leave. This is over. The debt is settled. You don't go near Sarah Chin ever again. You understand me? Boss, do you understand me? Yes, sir. Marcus ended the call. The 200 bikers remained motionless, engines silent. But their presence spoke louder than any threat. They weren't just backup. They were a promise. Touch this family again, and there would be nowhere to hide. Frank holstered his weapon. His men did the same, slowly, carefully. They backed toward their vehicles, keeping their eyes on the wall of leather and chrome surrounding them. As they drove away, tires screeching, Marcus finally turned to Sarah. She collapsed against him, sobbing. Emma. Is Emma okay? Before he could answer, the front door burst open. Emma ran out, her face wet with tears, and threw herself at Sarah. The nanny caught her, holding her tight, both of them shaking. Marcus knelt beside them, wrapping his arms around both. "You're safe now, both of you. Promise." The bikers stayed for another hour, making sure Frank and his crew were truly gone. They checked the perimeter, fixed the broken gate temporarily, and made their presence known to every security camera in a 5-mile radius. This property was protected now. Everyone would know it. Marcus stood in his living room, watching Sarah clean the cut on her lip while Emma clung to her side. The little girl hadn't let go since running out of the house. Her small hands gripped Sarah's shirt like a lifeline. "I'm so sorry," Sarah said finally, her voice breaking. "I brought this to your home. I put Emma in danger. I should have told you the truth from the beginning." Marcus sat down across from them. "Tell me now. Everything." So she did. She told him about David, about the loan sharks, about 3 years of running and hiding, about changing her name and never staying anywhere long enough to feel safe, about how she had planned to leave Malibu next month, before they could find her. But Emma had made her want to stay. "I was a coward," Sarah whispered. "I should have faced them years ago. Instead, I ran, and I brought danger to the only people who've shown me kindness since David died." Emma looked up at her nanny with wide, confused eyes. "Are you leaving? Are the bad men taking you away?" Sarah's tears came harder. "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know if it's safe for me to stay." Marcus leaned forward. "The debt is paid. Vincent Russo is a businessman, not a fanatic. He got his money. He knows what happens if he comes after you again. You're clear, Sarah. Actually clear. How can you be sure? Because men like Vincent understand power. They understand consequences. Right now, touching you means going to war with 200 Hell's Angels and a billionaire with unlimited resources. No amount of pride is worth that." Sarah looked at him, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. "You paid $400,000 for me. Why? You barely know me." Marcus glanced at his daughter, still clutching Sarah like she might disappear. "Because in 3 months you gave my daughter her smile back. You gave her security and love and normalcy in a world that took her mother away. Because you stayed when you should have run. Because when those men came, your first instinct was to protect Emma, not yourself." He stood up, walking to the window. "And because I know what it's like to have a past that follows you. I built this company, this life, but I'm still a biker. Still a brother. Still someone who understands that sometimes the world doesn't give you fair choices. You made the best choices you could with what you had." Sarah wiped her eyes. "What happens now?" "Now," Marcus said, turning back to them, "you stop running. You stay here with us for as long as you want. Emma needs you. And honestly, so do I." Emma's face lit up. "You're staying? Really staying?" Sarah looked at the little girl in her arms, then at Marcus, then at the home she had been too afraid to believe could truly be hers. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Safety. "Yes," Sarah said, smiling through her tears. "I'm really staying." 2 years later, the Malibu mansion looked different. The sterile, museum-like quality had been replaced with life. Emma's artwork covered the refrigerator. A vegetable garden bloomed where perfectly manicured lawn once stood. Wind chimes hung from the pergola, making music with the ocean breeze. Sarah stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. She wore jeans and a comfortable sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. The tired, haunted look in her eyes had been replaced with something softer. Peace. Emma, now 7, sat at the counter doing homework. She had grown taller, more confident. She talked constantly, asked endless questions, and had decided she wanted to be either a veterinarian or a motorcycle mechanic when she grew up. Maybe both. Marcus walked in from his morning ride, leather jacket still on, helmet under his arm. He kissed Emma on the head, then moved to Sarah, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. The wedding had been small, just family and brothers. Sarah wore a simple white dress and rode to the venue on the back of Marcus's Harley. Emma had been the flower girl, scattering petals while wearing a tiny leather vest that made the bikers roar with laughter and approval. Vincent Russo never came back. Word in certain circles was that he had retired, moved to Florida, and now spent his days fishing. Frank Cordero had been fired and disappeared from the business entirely. The debt and the vendetta truly ended that day in Malibu. Sarah had gone back to nursing, working 3 days a week at a children's hospital in Los Angeles. She found purpose again in helping others, in using her training to heal instead of hide. Marcus supported every decision, never once asking her to be anything other than herself. The guest house had been converted into an art studio for Emma. The main house now had photographs everywhere. Marcus and Sarah on their wedding day. Emma's school pictures. The three of them at bike rallies, at beaches, at simple Sunday dinners. Family. You know what today is? Marcus asked, pouring coffee. Sarah smiled. 2 years since the worst and best day of my life. Emma looked up from her homework. That's when the angels came and saved Sarah from the bad men. Right, Daddy? That's right, Princess. And that's when I learned that families protect each other. Emma continued matter-of-factly. No matter what, even if they're scared, even if it's hard. Marcus and Sarah exchanged a look. Their 7-year-old had learned lessons about loyalty and courage that some people never understood. Especially if it's hard, Marcus agreed. Sarah looked around the kitchen, at this life she never thought she deserved, and felt gratitude so profound it made her chest ache. She had been running for so long that she forgot what it felt like to be home. Now she remembered.